Hello, everybody. My name is Ryan McNeil, and this is the Builder by Day podcast. Today, my guest is a gentleman by the name of Greg Dempsey. Greg is a former provincial government employee who worked for the Department of Community Services, known as DCS. I became aware of Greg and his story on social media. Greg has been sharing his story via X, formerly known as Twitter, and I found it intriguing, so I invited him here to have a conversation with me and share the information here with all of us. Greg, thanks for being here. Thanks. Appreciate you doing this.
Yes, good morning. Thank you for the invite. I appreciate it.
Yeah, good. Thanks for accepting. I should mention that, I guess for everyone that's watching, you and I are not otherwise known to each other prior to this meeting. We did have a conversation via telephone.
It was like maybe a 20-minute conversation, and
yeah, exactly. Just to make sure that we could both make sure that neither one of us was a lunatic. Right?
Yeah.
But other than that, we're not known to one another. We're meeting for the first time. You have some information you'd like to share, and you're the type of person I'd like to talk to, and that's what we're doing. We're having a conversation.
Well, that's what I'm here for. So yeah, looking forward to it. Yeah.
So why don't you tell me and everybody else kind of a bit about who you are, and just kind of paint the picture, perhaps, about what's going on in your world.
Well, the last 4 years have been, I guess, the ending of a story in some ways for my life. 4 years ago, and I've been very vocal on X, on social media, the last two especially. But 4 years ago, I was fired for a Trudeau meme. It was one of his many blackface pictures. Was fired because of a meme. That's not why they really fired me. That was the reasoning, based on some policies that had come out a few weeks before I was put on suspension and then fired. And I was fired for a meme that I had sent to a former NDP candidate almost like 9 or 10 months before this new policy came out. These policies, they've always had policies for workplace behavior and conduct. It wasn't reinventing the wheel, but it was, again, back 4 years ago. Black Lives Matters, Antifa, the American Midwest was being burnt, right? You had all of that uprising. And that was what happened to me. That's what they used as a reason. They used a few other examples and things too, but it was because of that, and it was because of my support for President Trump 4 years ago. I was a supervisor with community services for the Case-Aid program, Case-Aid and Transportation. I worked there from 2015 on, and prior to that, I was at King's Regional Rehabilitation Center in Waterville for almost 20. My career started in 93, so yeah.
So I have some questions on that. So you were fired from that's a provincial government position, right?
Yeah.
You worked for the provincial government.
Yeah.
And you were fired from your job. And what was the reason they said that you were fired?
It was because I breached this new anti-racism policies that had just come out. Literally weeks prior to July 24th was when I went to a meeting and all this went down. They said it was because of that. It was because of a video that they said I tried to force the scheduler to never happen, and some other comments that I made. Like, they just picked and chose what they wanted to use. And the thing about it was, so then I was put on administrative leave. We can talk about that day in Kentville. That's where the meeting was held, and I was there for almost 3 hours. And so then I got, put on administrative leave.
Okay.
And then 6 weeks later, did not hear from anybody. There was no wellness checks. There was no checking up on me. That's pretty traumatic to be told that basically you're fired because of a Trudeau meme, of all things, right? Like
a blackface meme that has been shared millions of times on social media by however many people.
Right. And I sent it to this former candidate who was my staff. And I worked with all these people, the ones who made these complaints and stuff. But there was other things going on behind the scenes too. There was a meeting 2 weeks before that happened with one of my other staff. And I've never said this out loud actually, but there was a meeting 2 weeks before that. We can talk about that in a little bit later if you want. But again, there was no union there for me that day. I caught them recording me. We can talk about all that if you want. But it was very traumatic. And then I got called back in to go to the same office for another meeting. When I showed up, I was fired. I have no idea what was said about me. I don't think anybody at DCS. Anybody who I worked with was informed that I was fired because of a meme and a video. And the video was not anything, it was just a video, right? I had one of my staff that when the COVID hit, they were frightened and nervous. And I said, well, take a look at this video. Open your eyes and see what's going around you. Don't buy all the propaganda.
Okay, so it was a video pertaining to information surrounding COVID.
It was information concerning really the world. It's
Okay.
the plan to save the world. It was
Okay.
Joe and the guy, like on Rumble. It's on Rumble, right? It's
Okay.
just a video, and it just like you have to ask yourselves, like, what has happened the past 4 years? Everybody's President Trump, right? Election today, but 4 years ago, Trump derangement syndrome is real,
Oh, it's
and
definitely
I
real.
faced it. Yeah.
Wow. So what have you done since then? So this was you were fired 4 years ago?
4 years ago, like I said, it was very traumatic, right? So in the course of 4 years, there was a lot of other damages to my family. I lost everything. I lost my home, career, reputation for what I know of. I don't know what was said. Like I said, I have not spoken to anybody from DCS for 4 years. Not spoken to any of my coworkers. I don't think they believed it, but I don't know what to think. When I was in that meeting in Kentville, you're told, Greg, don't talk to anybody. So I didn't, right out of the gate. So I was excommunicated basically for 6 weeks before I got called back in to get fired. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm still hung up on this meme. So
It was a meme of Trudeau when he was a baby, and it's an actual picture, right, of Fidel Castro and his mother,
Sure.
Margaret there, Trudeau.
Yeah.
And Castro, I mean, it's, the conspiracy theory stuff,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So this NDP person, I kept we'll get to that in a second, but it was just a meme. And it was like the night of the first debate for that election year in 2019.
Okay.
And she was a liberal or whatever she is. But, of course, going off about, that was when Bernier, right? Maxime Bernier, and they were calling him a racist, right?
Right, yeah.
And we just, that's what are you going to do, right? You label people racist. What are you
That's
going
what
to
they
do?
do.
Right?
That's when they want to end the conversation.
Right. So we had a conversation. So I sent her a meme, right? It was nothing. And just a meme, but it's like, it wasn't even blackface. It was, I think it was one of the Arabian Night pictures. Like you have all those,
Oh, yes.
you have all those memes of Trudeau. And it was just the face superimposed on the baby, right? And I said, family picture, laugh out, like whatever, right? And that's it. So then 9 months later, or actually in September, when I had my meeting with the union and stuff, right? Well, we can get into that too, but I was informed it would hurt their feelings. Well, it didn't hurt their feelings, this individual's feelings, when I sent it to them. In fact, after that, it was nonstop. Anytime. The thing about, I walked into that job knowing what was coming. This is the first time that the province tried to do what they did to me was in 2013. And they followed the same pattern, the same script. So I knew what was coming. But she would always, this individual would always want to talk about conspiracy theories. Once the work was done, I let my staff, I let them lead the direction, whatever they wanted to go, because I was getting information from them. But there was other things I sent. There was other memes, and not memes, but just conspiracy theory stuff, just to kind of.
And you're sending these where? On social media?
Just text messages.
Oh, okay. All
Right? To their personal telephones.
Okay.
Too, right? But again, there was a meeting 2 weeks prior to mine in July of 2020 with one of my staff that I think some things happened at that meeting because everything changed. Like I was excommunicated. We were coming out of lockdowns too. Shut down of our programs.
Okay.
And all the staff that, not the ones that I wanted to do the first one, because there was protocols, cleaning, there was all the personal space, like one child, like there was a big family too. 7 kids, or something, or 5 kids, I should say. So, and parents. So I had to have a lot of moving parts. The visit, everybody had to be separate. There's new protocols and safety protocols because of COVID, which came out like every day, it seemed. And they didn't do their job. So I knew what was coming. Didn't surprise me. Disappointing, after 4 years, but yeah.
And you've obviously since then, you've attempted to share this story. I think have any of the media, local media outlets or local media news, has anyone ever said we'd like to hear your story, or would you like to share your story with us?
Well, I didn't the first year I was in a grievance process, which doesn't exist, which we should talk about it as well.
Sure.
But as far as the media, the first, when I started on X, as soon as Elon Musk bought it, before then, I think most people on X, I mean, they deplatformed President Trump, right?
Yeah.
So right there, that's control and trying to control the narrative. So when Musk bought that is when I started. So November 23rd of 2022 was when I really started on X. Before then, I really never used the platform much, just for information.
Right.
So yeah, no, I reached out in the spring of 2023, 24 now, 22, spring of 22. I reached out to CTV, spoke with Sarah Plowman, actually. She called me, we had a good conversation, she said, well, we can't touch this. Okay. Reached out to CBC. Hard to get anybody on the phone in CBC, Nova Scotia CBC. I reached out, finally got through to somebody up in Cape Breton in their Sydney radio station, and then I got talking or was emailing with Shania Luck. She actually responded again, same thing. No, we can't, we don't have the resources or we can't do this, but it was an open-ended email, almost like we'll keep the door open.
Okay.
Reached out to Global, spoke with the producer, nobody. They just wouldn't touch this. And why? Well, because I don't have an NDA. That changes the game here. And have all the evidence to prove what I'm saying.
How does it? Can you explain to folks that
Sure.
perhaps don't understand? How does that change the game? How does not having an NDA affect this situation for you?
Because I am not silenced.
Okay.
I went through the process with NSGEU, and right out of the gate, they had to change what this was about. It became not about a meme. It didn't become about my termination letter. What it became about was they made it about some technicality. And so as soon as I got fired, I immediately called a bunch of people, including some Liberal MLA offices. But I called, immediately I called NSGEU and filed a grievance, like whatever. And then we met. All that was done through Skype, so there was no face-to-face. It was me and with this union rep in our office in Dartmouth, that beautiful building. That building and everybody else, there was like 14 government people and just me, right? And I didn't say anything, and they got talking. Because before that meeting too was with the former deputy minister, Tracy Twill, who's now head of public service, right? She got that job. It's the highest civil service job in the province. They started to talk, and I don't think, and I publicly have stated this, I think that she got set up a little bit too, because she wasn't prepared for that. The only thing that she said that day, and the only thing I commented on was what she said. She said that it hurt their feelings. That's right. So it
Whose
hurt
feelings is she
it hurt
referring
their,
to?
it hurt the feelings of the people, like the former NDP candidate and the staff, right? I never got to defend myself about those staff either. To this day, I've never given statements about what happened, what was going on in that office, right? But she wasn't prepared, Tracy Twill. She wasn't prepared, and then I said, well, I'm sure it hurt their feelings, and basically got shushed. And then it made, so then the union guy said, well, we're gonna file an appeal or a grievance based on some technicality and something that didn't even pertain to this. Like they should have absolutely destroyed DCS, the provincial government, over firing me over a meme and everything else. Like no union members the day I was fired, no union members didn't contact me until I called them. The protocols weren't followed, nothing was followed. And it's funny though, and I mentioned Tracy Twill, because I, like on X publicly and in emails since then, in July, the 1st of July, she would always send out, for DCS, she would always send out an email every day, just kind of wrapping up the day and just whatever her thoughts. And one on a Friday was like July the 2nd, she made a comment saying, at the end of it saying, I'm going to head out to the lake with some of my girlfriends for the weekend. Okay. And because everything's so sensitive back then. And then on the Monday, she wrote this big email. And then on the bottom, it was almost like a disclaimer apologizing for the comments that she made, that it offended people, saying that she was going to go, she just made a comment, right? And I went like, what the fuck? I remember reading it at work and I yelled that out in my office, like, why are you apologizing for? But again, right? So when I said that to the union, I said that the first time I was in their meeting with the union, I said, I said to them, this has got nothing to do with a meme. I said, this is about a lot of other things. But I said, Tracy Twill was able to publicly apologize for for her actions, which there was no reason for ever in this world to ever apologize for an innocent statement like that. But she was able to publicly apologize. Now, if I thought for 1 second that I actually legitimately hurt this individual's feelings, because I can talk about that, I know I didn't.
Right.
Union agitators, some of them are simply untouchable. She was, this candidate was one. But that changed the focus for that union. Like, it was important to get me out. So then I was on a grievance. I was on it for 11 months, hardly any communication. And I withdrew it after, I was at a law firm, which we can talk about in a little bit, Pink Larkin, which I never should have been at. That was about a whole different situation. I had a long career. But getting back to the NDA, I went through it for 11 months. And at the end of it, I had another meeting with the third union rep. And I just looked at him and I said, if I signed something, which I had no intention of signing because I knew, right? I knew what would happen if I signed something. Because one, I wasn't going to sign something because I didn't do anything wrong. And I'm not perfect, right? I'm not. Who is? There's nobody who works for DCS who is. There's nobody in this province. There's nobody perfect. But I withdrew it simply because if I signed it, they would have taken my voice away, which means I wouldn't have been able to defend my own family, wouldn't have been able to talk about my situation, what happened. And an NDA, basically, they're going to silence you. And the emails that back and forth with the NSGU, it was different reality. It was psychological warfare because they're trying to get you to sign your voice away. And I know I wasn't the only person hit. In my gut, I know other people in that 2021 year, before that election, the provincial election in 21, I have a feeling other people had to sign. They had no choice. But no way in hell I was going to sign that. There was no way. Because I knew it was about other things. I knew it was about something else.
Were they offering you something if you signed it?
Well, that's the thing too. It's not, you don't get a lot of money, right? I think people, the misconception about, well, if you sign an NDA, you're going to get a lot of money. And no. It was I wrote this lengthy email to the second rep I had, right? They said there was no grounds and all this foolishness. I'm like, well, here's a whole bunch of evidence. Anyways, what they promised was just a generic reference letter, right? Just a reference letter from DCS and maybe some severance pay a couple of months or something like that, right?
Nothing.
This is not about money.
It's not like they were offering your job back.
No. And in the way I look at it, I immediately, when this guy said to me, and I looked at this new guy, he was a young guy, and I said, if I sign it, I wouldn't be able to defend my family or me. And he said, that's right. I said, well, then withdraw it. And then I told the other person what I did the week before I had that meeting, because I walked into a building. Went into a DCS building and showed them a few things that I had discovered over a couple of years. Like, I've not stopped working for this province. I have not stopped. It was really weird when I got that job because initially, I was a permanent relief staff. I was always on the road, worked for 5 years, started in 2015. When I took the job as supervisor, originally, I'm also was a nonviolent crisis intervention trainer. So in the spring of just before in 2019, in May, they put out a feeler about people expressing interest if they wanted to be a trainer. And I put my name in, right? I long career and it was what I like to do. And then the first thing was, well, no, you can't because you're permanent relief. Well, okay, good enough. Excellent, that's fine. Then within maybe it was a day or two after that, I'm like, yeah, you can do it now. All of a sudden they changed their minds. So right then I'm like, game on, I knew. And the thing about it too, when I took that job in 2015, I had a guy went in there with a plan anyway. It's like the game was on because of what happened to me a couple of years prior to that and everything else. I went in eyes wide open. And anyways, so after that, and then a couple of weeks after getting, being trained, went in Halifax for 4 days. It was probably the best 4 days I've ever spent professionally doing that course. The instructor was amazing. It was just a good bunch of people. And then a few weeks, getting the instructor, becoming that, they posted the team lead job in Granville. And I wanted it because I wanted to change. But there was also another reason.
What do you foresee, if you're your own future? What do you see a path here for yourself?
Well, I mean, I've had like the last 4 years, especially the last 3, I've had a lot of conversations with the PC government. I think they, like I walked in, even before I withdrew that grievance, I walked in through the doors of an MLA office. No, wait a second. No, I didn't, sorry. There's been a lot going on. No, I withdrew the grievance and then I walked in a week after, just as soon as they had taken power.
Okay.
Right? They couldn't get me in that office quick enough. I was there twice within 3 days. Spoke with them, Liberals in 2020. We can talk about that in a bit. But I think they took what I said seriously. I've been nothing but open and transparent. I've given them everything. And the path forward for me, like there's a lot of talk about retaining staff and that staff shortages, which you can believe it or not believe it. But how do you recruit staff? You certainly don't, you aren't going to be able to recruit staff if you're accusing people of being a racist over a Trudeau meme of all things. Or if you're going to allow people to lie about you. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to treat people like the grievance does not exist, it's used to cover up government corruption and fraud. They work together in unison. It's mm-hmm. right. So for me, the path forward, I don't even need an apology. I don't want that. But I would like to be reinstated.
Okay.
Even if it's only temporarily, not in the job. I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure what I'm qualified to do anymore. The last 4 years, I'm not the same person. What I've been doing behind the scenes, it's elevated. Like my last 4 years, 30-year career has come like to this moment here, really. But I mean, I have not stopped working. I've trained. I had to train some people just in my own personal world for some things. But how do you get staff? You would want, to make sure, hey, if things go wrong, go south, we're there to protect you, especially like a union. That union, anyways.
Well, I think it's pretty clear nowadays that the government in general, all levels of government, from what I see, is their priority when it comes to recruiting and hiring folks is, first of all, you better get in line. Right? So if you take a government job, whether it's, doesn't matter what it is, it could be Canadian Armed Forces, it could be provincial government, municipal government, whatever it might be, there's no stepping out of line. So nowadays, in today's world, if you take this position, a government position, then God forbid you say anything, even in your personal life. Mm-hmm. God forbid you said anything 20 years ago in your personal life.
Yeah. Or just the fact that you were bear witness to something 20 years ago.
Sure.
Which is the reason why they fired me.
Right.
In all honesty. There's a certain court case in this province.
Okay.
The people with disability. And I'm not going to say the names of the clients but Beth McLean. Because I knew Beth. I worked with her for 10 years. That was that court case. That was the big one, right? Had national implications for people with disabilities. And I bore witness to something, I was there. The first thing I did, I started my career, I got out of university in 93. A couple months after that, I started at the rehab center. So in June of 1993. And day one, the first thing that was ever told to us is that we were able, we had to sign confidentiality agreements. And the first thing, and his name was George Murphy. He was the HR guy, right? Human staff training, mm-hmm. different title back then. Was that it wouldn't matter if it was the day that you sign it, or 30 years down the line, if you were part of anything, bore witness to anything, had information of, you could be called upon as a witness. Wouldn't matter if you were still there or not working there.
Okay.
That always stuck with me. And that's another thing about the NDAs that it takes you out, right? So I witnessed something 30 years ago. There was some major incidents with Beth McLean at the rehab center. And a lot of this too, I have to advocate for Beth. Beth's no longer here. That was a major court case that has so many holes in it. She had a life prior to the year 2000, mm-hmm. which when anything that came out in the media about that court case, they didn't touch upon. Some very serious things. So when I say I'm not the only person who got hit, there were other people. And that was a major court case. And so if you're going to look back into her history, what was that? I don't want to get into that court case.
Sure, yeah.
But I can talk about Beth. And I know that when I read those reports, I was a little disgusted by it, simply because it did not mention anything about her life at King's. That place, I was there for 20 years. Didn't end well for a lot of reasons, and I kind of know now why, in 2012, 2013. But there were some major incidents with Beth. But the rehab center in the 90s did everything they could for her, every opportunity for her to thrive. To be successful, they attempted, including outside of the building. Everything was attempted with Beth.
Okay.
So I just find that whole process in the court proceedings, the lawyer who represented Beth, the law firm, Pink Larkin, that's where I was at for my grievance, which I never should have been there. A lot of dots to connect. And it comes back to, I was witness to some instances. For that court case, they would have looked at her charts and her information her entire life. And starting in 93, my name would have been signed off on a lot of her paperwork and her charting and her resident record. It was resident record and client records.
Okay.
And all that stuff would be evidence. And I'm not the only person whose name was throughout that. Yeah, there's a lot going on in this province. Like I say, I don't think I'm the only person that we got or that was trying to be coerced into sign. And it's what it is. It's coercion. It's to get you to sign your voice away. And a lot of people have no choice. But it cost me everything to be sitting here today. And I would do it again in a second.
Yeah, it's obviously very unfortunate, and it's unfortunate that we're living in a time and a place where it caught there's a price to pay for, I don't know, standing up for what's right, for speaking your mind, for not biting your tongue, whatever it might be. And it appears to me that you're a victim of the machine that doesn't want anyone to do that, right?
Well, the old machine. I'm not. See, I can only judge what happened to me up until 2021.
Okay.
And then there was a change in government. But you have career bureaucrats that will do the bidding, right? You had the Liberals in power for 9 years. Before that, you had the NDP. PCs haven't been in power since, early 2000s. So everything that happened to me was based upon my experience with the Liberal government. And possibly the NDP as well. Like, I'm not going to rule that out. I've been so open and transparent in evidence, but it has not been reciprocated.
The Liberal and NDP government, to me, seem like they're one and the same anyway.
They're the same party.
It's the same. They're the same party, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
They just each one takes a little more extreme view, perhaps, on certain issues, but they are one and the same.
Well, Singh is Chender's boss,
right?
And that's in their constitution. And Trudeau is Churchill's. Churchill, he's the big supporter of when he started his career. He's a career politician.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, I know, again, they used the meme of Trudeau, but the first MLA I spoke with was Keith Irving. That's like I lived in Coldbrook, so he was my MLA. And I called up his office, and it wasn't Keith Irving, but it was his office staff at the time was Carmen Kerr, who now is Annapolis. He's the MLA for Annapolis. And that was the first two people I spoke with. And it wasn't me boo-hooing. It was almost like, all right, assholes, I know what you guys did. I didn't give them a lot of information, but I said, there's things I'm going to find out just with my own personal story. And I said, I'm going to find out some stuff. And we talked a lot, but it was, that was the first person I spoke with. And then I called the NSGU. So I've done things different ways and stuff, but I did that for Irving because, in all honesty, you would never know he was the constituent or the MLA for that area. And I lived there for 20 years in Coldbrook.
Really?
So, again, a Trudeau meme. So politics, right? They're the same party, but again, it's about information. Like, everybody involved with what happened to myself and my family got promotions. Irving became the climate MLA, what I got, environmental, whatever. I can't, sorry, but wherever the camera is, I can't deal with that. But they all got promotions. And also, the local MP, Cody Blois, showed up at my house when he was first running. The same thing, right? He was wearing a Acadia hockey jacket. He never played at Acadia. Only thing out of his mouth was a hockey player. It's like, okay. Like, you pandering fool. Sorry, but
wow.
It's funny over the years when I got that job at DCS, they never asked me anything about the rehab center because it was the same thing. They were trying to get me to sign something there as well. They never asked me any questions about the rehab center. When I got hired, I got offered jobs in two offices, King's office and Granville, and I took Granville just because I lived in Coldbrook and I wanted some privacy. but also for the families and children's service too, right? Like if you're out and about in the community, I don't think people need to see you.
Sure.
You know, it's privacy too, right? So I chose Granville, the smaller office. So,
you know, it's interesting. Obviously, we're in the midst of a provincial election here now, and we're just coming off a municipal election, and we're currently talking about a federal election, and of course, all of us are today.
Almost by design, huh?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we're just in a constant state of
chaos.
Yeah. It's like
Purpose.
And everything in our lives has become politicized.
Yes.
Every single thing in our lives have become politicized, and
no more so since when Trump he won in 2016.
Sure.
Since then, it's been different.
Remember when? I guess it probably started. You know, when Trump was running for office the first time, so maybe 2015 or so.
Yeah.
Remember, Trump would be on Twitter, right? And I'm calling it Twitter because that's what it was back then. But Trump would be on X.
Yep.
And he'd be making posts, and back then, remember, people would say, "Oh, it's so unprofessional for a president to be using social media and posting directly." And now here we are in just a short period of time. And now, if you don't do that, people would say, "Well, who is this person?
Yeah.
How can we trust someone who's not on social media and posting every day?"
Well, and he changed the game, right? Like he was talking directly to the public, and that's the thing. You can't believe like right now they're saying all the polls, like Iowa, for instance, he's up by 10 points in Iowa.
Sure.
But of course, you know, the early voting numbers are coming in. Trump's winning all of that. Of course, the media, they have to jump and attack. I mean, it's just been nonstop, right?
It's hard to believe, really, when you watch it it's amazing to me, man. When you watch the quote unquote news and you watch the media, and I don't care. It doesn't matter if it's Trump. It could be any particular. We could choose any issue at hand. It could be immigration, education,
Stuff they don't want to talk about.
Yeah, anything.
Let's not talk about why everything's so unaffordable. Let's not.
That's right.
Let's not bring that up.
That's right. But no matter what it is, there's the truth of what those of us who pay attention and are genuinely concerned about these things and want the truth. There's the truth, and then there's what's delivered to us via I'll call it the mainstream media.
Legacy media.
Legacy
it's
media.
Propaganda.
Sure. Yeah.
They're just reading a script.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, and it's funny because yesterday, you know, talk about social media, you know, and the stories that, you know, we were talking about off camera about what came out this morning, right?
Right.
It's like, it's scripted. You know what's coming. You know when you read these stories. Like every time, I mean, I'm hard on some of these provincial guys because, well, I'm pissed.
Sure.
So you're going to get it from me, right? I'm going to come at you, and I don't care. But I'm not rude or ignorant. I'm just pointing out the obvious, and they don't like. It's different now, the political spectrum, because they can't control the messaging anymore.
Sure.
CTV, CBC, like they're dinosaurs now.
Yeah, they are dinosaurs. I mean,
my ex account, you know, I was very silent about it. I never really put it out there until, like we were saying, until Musk bought it and stuff. But it wasn't until just a few months ago that I started to really, well, I mean, I went after them a couple of years ago pretty good. You know,
Sure.
and you get people blocking you,
Sure.
like an MP and stuff like that. It was kind of funny, right?
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Because you're just pointing out what they're doing.
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Like, you know, I pointed out to Cody Blois that he was using his family and a dog as cover to protect him when he's out at these parades and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's what he was doing. If you look at these pictures that they take, you don't look at the individuals, the MPs, but you look at the crowd behind them. No wonder he had people with him.
Sure.
One of my favorite pictures of Churchill is when he was at Apple Blossom Parade 2 years ago. Or actually, this year was even funnier. But some of the pictures when he's walking around, like people wanted to, like they were shooting daggers at him. Mm-hmm. And then this year when he goes, he had his family with him. He wasn't wearing red. He was in blue. And, you know, one picture of him just kind of off, you know, which was good, right? He uses his kids too much anyways. But
yeah, I mean, look, I'll be honest with you. I don't envy anyone in the political world. I think politics in general has just become such a toxic.
It's war.
And it's so unprofessional. And I can't think of. I'm a home builder and in the construction industry, and I've been doing this for 20 years. And I can tell you, quite frankly, this is no shocker. Anyone in the construction business can definitely verify this, that we're a relatively unsophisticated industry, and there's plenty of foul language and there's plenty of conflict. And,
yes.
and I mean plenty. Like on any given day.
Similar to DCS, but yes.
Yes, on any given day, and sometimes it's just it can't even be customer or client conflict. You know, you're just trying to solve a problem and perhaps a customer's not happy about something. But but still you deal with that every day, and that can wear on you over time. But aside from that aspect of things, that's because that's more rare. But we're constantly fighting with tradespeople and suppliers about this invoice is wrong or that's wrong or you did this and who's going to pay for that. And it's just constant conflict. So I'm no stranger to living in a conflict environment. But on the political side of things, it's just wild. I mean, the way people, now some of them deserve it. I'm not saying they don't deserve it, but the way people
they definitely
speak
deserve it.
to politicians and the way they speak to one another. But now what I notice more and more, and always from the left, and I don't even like using the terms left and right, but I don't know how else to really describe it, right? But this rhetoric that comes from the left now, that is not even about the other politician. It's about us as citizens in society. This stuff and it's especially from the NDP side. And I'll make no bones about it. I'm not an NDP fan. I'm not a government
I'll
fan.
say it. You're not a communist.
Yeah, well, yes, I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist.
Sorry, Chender, but
Absolutely not. And there's, I'm not. And now in saying that, I have plenty that I'm not content with current government as well. They're not doing everything correctly by any means. But this thing that they do, where they take a particular issue at hand, and they try to turn it into, they'll say things like, we're going to get these greedy landlords, or we're going to get these greedy business owners, or we're going to get these rich people who aren't paying their share. This divisive thing that they do where they turn one group against another group. And that, first of all, it pisses me off because these landlords and it could be the food and service industry, it could be whatever that case is. These are, at the end of the day, these are business owners. And these are the men and women who are driving the economy. And quite frankly, they're paying, that 20% of those folks are paying 80% of the taxes that we're collecting. Mm-hmm. And they're not your enemy.
No.
They're not your enemy.
No.
But they're being made out to be the enemy by certain political parties, and it pisses me off to no end.
Because it's avoidance of reality. They're not willing, these political parties, I know what you're saying. It could be anything. It could be school violence. It could be anything that's in the news, and they'll jump upon it. But yeah, like right now, the housings. But they don't want to address the fact, okay, well, how many people are in this country who shouldn't be?
Right.
How many here on expired work visas and student visas and just never left or breaking the law? How many people are here illegally?
Correct.
How many people are coming up through Roxham Road in Quebec from the States, right? They dumped on Trump because he wanted $5 billion for a wall.
Right.
There's reasons why he wanted to build that wall, because it's basically they're military-age men coming over the border.
Yes, of course.
They're being put into these small Midwest. It's about voting demographics, right? You get, that's what they're talking about, mass amnesty for. It's surprising that it hasn't happened in Canada yet. I'm waiting for that because, like, the Democrats and Liberals, it's the same playbook. So at some point, I'm expecting Trudeau to say, "Oh, we're going to give mass amnesty to anybody who's here illegally." Like, you want immigration, you want legal immigration, right?
Yes, you want legal, controlled immigration. The way it always. There was a point in my life where I moved to the U.S. for school, and back then, that was a big deal. I had to have all my ducks in a row. I had to be able to show the address where I was going to live and my acceptance letter at the school that I was going to, and I had to, go through the border and present all this documentation. And it was like, oh, you graduate. Let's say it was April 30th. Well, you got to be out of the country by May 30th, or what? There was some kind of time frame. And yes, immigration, controlled immigration, and planned immigration is both. Well, it would be necessary at this point, but that's not what we're dealing with. We're not dealing with this controlled immigration, calculated immigration. We're dealing with mass immigration.
They don't even know how many people. They don't even know you had Fraser, housing minister, and immigration. Like, come on, you don't even know how many people are here illegally. They don't have a clue, and they're trying to come across like, oh, we're going to do this.
They don't have a clue.
No,
they absolutely don't have a clue.
No, and you see it across Canada. The same, like, stuff out west. Like, you're having people like the problems from the immigrants countries are coming to Canada. That's not, like, we don't need that.
Well, you're seeing yesterday, the social media was lighting up over this, what's going on up in Brampton, Ontario.
Yes.
And I don't want to get into it. Like, I'm not taking sides. I don't know nothing about that, but I look at it and go, okay, well, hold on. No, I don't care about the details.
There's 4 cops.
Yeah. I don't care about the details of, at the end of the day, it's a group of people. It's a group of people that I'm not familiar with, and it's a situation I'm not familiar with. So I'm not casting judgment on who's right or wrong, But that behavior as a whole is not okay.
No. No.
What the fuck are we doing here? We got massive groups of people attacking police officers and attacking pedestrians as they drive by and carrying flags down the street and chanting, fuck the police.
And the arrest they make, they're out on bail within hours.
Right.
They're just released without any, conditions. I mean, they may have a few conditions and they go back out.
Right. And there would be people who would listen to this conversation I'm having right now.
Oh, they would label me
a racist.
Well, it's too late, right?
I don't know what race those folks. I don't care what race those folks are. It's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the behavior that they are exhibiting, not their race or even their cause. I don't care about that. Nobody does that. You can't point to another example. You couldn't find another example anywhere where you could find Canadians behaving that way. We don't behave that way. We don't accept that behavior. But suddenly, we accept that behavior as long as it's not.
It's these social justice warriors.
Yes.
And I go after the NDP about this because that's what some of them are. It's like Toastmaster Club when they get up and stand. But that's what it is. It's just the cause and what causes the most chaos. And it's a drain on our system. Mm-hmm. It's deliberate. I mean, if you look the last 4 years, what has happened, not only here, but in the States, it's been deliberate. It's been by design.
Of course.
It's to import voters, right? Like today's election in the States, like no one knows what's going on. I mean, it should be a landslide.
It should be, yes.
But, 4 years ago, like that's the thing, I got taken out before the election too, right? So 4 years ago, right? So I haven't watched news since that night. But anyways, but it's done by design. It's done deliberately, just like removing someone like me from DCS and whoever else they did. It was done by design. Mm-hmm. And what they did, like it's deliberate and it weakens everything. And you don't have control. It's chaos.
Yeah.
And it's by design.
I look at it like this, and of course I'm not alone. I'm not coming up with this on my own. I mean, it just makes sense. But I find that we're living in a world now where the entire politics in general has just become, and the concept of what it is we're doing when we have elections and when we discuss these things, the concept has just been completely lost. When you hire a government, when you elect officials and they then in turn appoint who they need to appoint and they staff things and they hire whoever they need to hire, their job is to, whatever jurisdiction we're talking about, whether it's municipal or provincial or federal, their job is to run that like a business. That's what we're hiring them to do. We're not hiring them to tell us what to think or how to think or what we should think or what our opinion should be.
Or take a needle or you can't participate in society.
That's right. They're hired to do a job. It's like you could obviously equate in this current election here in the province, you could equate obviously the premier to being the CEO of the company, yes. Right?
Yep.
The company being the province of Nova Scotia. And we all, as citizens, are shareholders of that company. We all have a vested interest in the company being profitable is not the right word, but the company being healthy and the company doing what is in the best interest of the shareholders. That should be its mandate, like any company.
Well, it wasn't very healthy when he walked in here 3 years ago, regardless of what.
Oh, I agree.
Whatever they want to say, the Liberals, like right now, what they're like, it's like, oh no, nothing didn't exist, right? No, like the Liberals, Churchill and Churchill and Gender. But this province was in rough shape. Mm-hmm. And it's funny, like, about healthcare and everything, all the issues that are coming up. And it's like, Houston was supposed to fix and rectify all these issues that the Liberals spent 9 years deliberately weakening this province in every way, shape, and form, that if it's not done in 2 weeks, then of course the Liberals can start to hammer them again, right? And say, well, it's your fault. So now we've got the solutions again. And it's a game. It is. But it is frustrating because holy.
And when you listen to some of the things they say, I mean, I've mentioned this a couple of times in the brief bit of somewhat political conversation that I've had in these first few episodes and so on, but even here today, I'm the first to admit that I'm not a political expert. I'm not well versed in the who's who and the what's what of politics. I don't quite have any interest in doing that, to be honest with you. But there are certain things I know, and housing is one of them, right? And I know it like inside and out. And it's clearly a problem. It's clearly an issue here. It's not people group it together. People, they talk about affordable housing and the homeless situation and the lack of housing. They put it all together like it's one thing. It's not one thing. There's many different things going on there. And some folks, they have they come up with these weird and wonderful ideas about what's the cause, or better yet, what is the solution. And I'll pick on the NDP
Without policy specifics, but yes, they got the
without any specifics, of course. But they'll say these things like the one that drives me crazy right now, and the NDP here in this province, they continue to say it. Things like they suggest, for instance, that if they are elected, they're going to do away with fixed term leases, and that will solve the problem.
Just overnight.
Yeah, that'll solve the problem.
It won't do anything.
No, as a matter of fact, I think it will have exactly the opposite effect, because
I think you're right. Yeah.
There is a certain percentage of the rental properties out there and landlords out there who use fixed term leases to rent units to high risk tenants.
Yes.
High risk for different reasons. High risk for financial reasons. High risk for personal circumstances. But they basically these landlords or organizations essentially take a chance on. They roll the dice on someone who they realize it's a pretty good chance that this person is going to either not pay their rent or leave this thing a mess or whatever it might be. And they use fixed term leases for that reason. And I believe All Nova Scotia mentioned, I believe there was a story a couple of days ago where somebody had put some statistics to this, where they had interviewed rental property owners in the province. And I think it was something to the tune of like somewhere between 43 and 78% of those who had responded said that if fixed term leases were abolished, they just simply won't rent to these people anymore. So there you go. So the most vulnerable population will be just quite simply, they'll be given no option.
Right.
Because you can't force a landlord or a property owner to rent a property to someone that they know going into it, this isn't going to work. This person has terrible credit history, or they don't have a job, or whatever it might be. Right?
Yeah. Well, yeah. There are rules, and as a business owner, you're not to do this to be charity. Like, you want to be successful. You're not greedy. You build up a business. You want to make profit. You want to be, sure.
Well, you have to, yeah. And the other thing is, people, there's also a misconception that keeps getting, I guess, exaggerated by some of the political parties that like to push it. There is also this misconception that rental property owners are somehow, just getting rich off every unit. You rent, like if you spend $2,000 a month on rent, there are people out there that think this property owner is making $1,000 a month. This person's they're probably lucky if they're turning out $150 or something on that 2,000 in profit. I mean,
well, yeah,
they're not that. It's a long-term game. The rental business is a long-term game. It's an investment game. These are investors, and they're business owners, and it has to make business sense. You can't ask a business owner to rent property when they know they're going to lose money, and then it goes beyond that, because then you get into these political parties who suggest solutions to things that those of us who are in the industry know is just simply not going to.
They don't suffer the consequences.
That's right.
It's the business owners. It's the homeowner. It's the people looking for rent. It's not the politicians. They don't suffer the consequences.
That's right. And it's the people who need the rental properties who will also suffer the consequences. It's not just the property owners or the rental folks. It's the folks that
need a place to
live. And when they do certain things like rent caps and do away with fixed term leases, you're just going to make it more difficult. You're not going to.
It's more government control.
That's right.
And it's communism.
That's right.
And everything that they talk, the wording and all that stuff. And I'm not saying that Chender or Churchill are communists. They've acted like it, especially some in the Liberal Party. But that's what it is. It's price controls. It's like even they talk about grocery prices and stuff.
Yeah, and controlling them.
Yeah, and it's about greed. It's like it's the catchphrases. It's the word. It pisses off the public.
Right.
And it's the voter base too.
That's right. Yeah.
And that's why I think, again, me not having that non-disclosure agreement is important, because their base and their voter base, most of them are government employees and union members, right? That are going to buy this garbage, and they're going to think that everybody's out to get them all the time, and it's just it's the chaos. Right?
Yeah, and it would be hard
constant. It's just constant.
If someone, it'd be a huge undertaking, but it'd be great to see a new political party kind of rise from the ashes of this shit that we're currently dealing with, that is truly looking to work in the best interests of the citizens of the province, and
it's how it should be anyways.
Almost like a
be without question.
But to always and in doing that, you would have to the mandate of this, or the goal of this group, let's just call it this new populist style political party, for instance, their goal would be, if I had anything to do with that, not that I don't want to be in the political world, but what I would like to see them do is give everybody the real and truthful information, agree upon what it is that we need to get focused on here that is in your control as the provincial government, for instance, and then tell everyone what it is that you're going to do to make that better. So you could pick some very high level items. It could be, look, here's whether it's healthcare, education, immigration, whatever it might be, but give everybody the facts. We don't even do that part yet. We don't even talk about it, let alone, yeah, I guess we don't get anywhere near the facts. There are certain things we don't even discuss. Like this, we don't even bring up. Like when you talk about
taboo subjects, right?
That's right. Like I have probably the thing that pisses me off more than anything these days is the public education system. And and it's not the teachers. It's not the teachers in the system. And
well, some of them.
It's some of them, but I think that's no different than any profession.
No, it isn't.
There are asshole home builders, and there are asshole lawyers, and there are asshole teachers, right?
Right.
And some of that has to do with their ideologies and different things. But generally speaking, the problem is the system, not the teachers within the system. But the teachers can't say anything about it. That's why I always mention people. I'm like, listen, regardless of how much you care about it, or how much you've heard about it, or how much, or perhaps what side of any issue you might stand on, I think we could all agree that the healthcare system and the public school system are in need of some work, right? But forget about what you think the solution is. We can all agree there's work to be done there. But don't you find it interesting that you never hear from anybody in that system who works in that system who tells you this is how it actually is. This is what's actually going on inside the school.
You know what the mistake they make? Because people think calling their MLA is going to make a difference.
Yeah, that's not going to do anything.
That's number one. And two, I mean, I think they're scared to death to open their mouths. Like situation with me, I'm not sure what people think, what happened to me, but I have a feeling majority didn't believe it, and they were probably scared into silence. So
that's definitely what it is. I mean, especially if you look at, especially when it comes to the teachers.
Yeah.
They're absolutely scared to open their mouths, because I know teachers who have shared with
that right to work stuff that came down like that. I can't, like the Liberals did that to the teachers and stuff. I can't imagine going back in as a teacher after that. It wouldn't be the same anymore.
No, and I've had conversations with teachers and spouses of teachers who have shared stories that they'll share a story and they'll say, "Don't tell anyone."
Yeah,
this is what goes on, but don't tell anyone. I don't want to get my husband in trouble, or my wife in trouble, or myself in trouble. But
so now you know why no one wants to speak with me.
Yes, of course. Oh, I
totally. Why, you know what I mean? It's because
I completely get it. Yeah,
I'm like nuclear.
Sure, absolutely. See,
and I'm glad I am, because when I got that job as a team lead, my interview, I told them what I was going to do with that program, and I knew I didn't have a lot of time. I knew they were coming. I knew stuff was unresolved from 2013. They breached my confidentiality was breached. My medical confidentiality was breached with the province. Mm-hmm. Not so much as even, are you okay? Mm-hmm. Never to this day. But I knew, right? So in my interview, I told them exactly what I was going to do with that program. So the case aid, of course, working with kids, mm-hmm. right? Case aids, what they do is they transport kids, could be anywhere in the province, to go do home visit kids who are in care. And during my interview, I really didn't answer their questions, what they were asking me. I just started to say, well, this is what I am going to do. Mm-hmm. And you talk about people just getting to work and doing what needs to be done.
Right.
So in 6 months before the pandemic hit, I completely did. They were, the big push then was with the Liberals and the Bedford Basin MLA, Kelly Regan, who, hi Kelly, I've really gone hard after her because I don't have an ounce of respect. I know she's knee deep in my stuff. I know she is. And I'll say it publicly because I have said it on X. So, okay. But the couple days after I started in that team, I got the job, right? And even and all the people that I work with, I called them all individually before I even applied, and I told them I was going after the job. I said I needed to change, and there was other reasons. But she showed up in Granville Ferry doing the Ministers Roadshow about the transformation of community services. So we're sitting in Granville Ferry, and I'm watching this video. It wasn't her talking. Her background's in media. It's not worth kids and stuff.
Right.
I mean, a lot of those MLAs are just puppets anyways. Like, it's the bureaucrats and it's the deputy ministers and like the people that actually do the jobs. That would be frustrating. But anyways, I simply did that transformation in 6 months. I knew what I was going to do, and I did it. I didn't care. And I say, well, Again, back to the video. So it was just this video presentation, and she, of course, asked me what I thought about it afterwards, and I simply said, we already have everything we need to do this. I don't think that was perceived very well, me saying that, because everything you say, everything has to be these big issues. And like with the housing, the same thing. How do you solve it? Well, for me, the case aid and the transformation, you could have a child who's in care. They could be in, say, Parisboro. I'm going to use an example that I know quite well. Their parents could live in the valley. So, but their child, if it has to go into care, it could be in a foster home in Parisboro or in Cape Breton. You have kids from Cape Breton that are up in the valley. So how do you change things? How do you make it better? The focus in those jobs weren't the kids, it was their expense claims.
Right.
A lot of money. And I was the top, we can talk about that too. I was the top money earner in the province for probably 4 years. Okay. And I walked away from it. But in those 6 months before the pandemic hit, I focused on what wasn't being focused on in that job. It was done deliberately. It was weakened those jobs. You're dealing with other people's children, right?
Yep.
Any child that walks through a building for a DCS, it could be anybody's child. You walk in through those doors, you expect professionalism, and you expect the people that are like intake workers or anybody, you expect them to be top notch. Okay? Don't know if you have kids or not.
I do. I have three.
If your child walked in through a building, or any MLA if their child walked through those doors, you would expect, regardless of a parent's politics or who they are, you would expect them to be treated a certain way.
Of course.
Without exception. That doesn't happen. But I focused with that job on the kids. I focused on the client needs, operational requirements, not expense claims. So training, equipment, trying to rebuild a relationship with social workers. We were forbidden to talk to social workers in 2017, 2018. No communications. Like, what are you doing, right?
Why was that?
I think, honestly, I've never really gotten an explanation for that. I know in 2017, yeah, we're way off what you said. Sorry.
That's okay.
Bring me
Come
back.
back to it. We'll
Bring me back. We'll come back to it. In 2017, it was, at the time they were called access facilitators, and you had transporters. So when I was hired as a transporter. I was overqualified for that, but whatever, right? Worked with kids for 10 years and whatever. But it didn't change the way I did that job, like for me anyways. But in 2017, they created the case aid program. So they got rid of, everybody became one job. But the focus was never on those kids. And people can say what they want, but it wasn't. It was about expense claims. A lot of these staff viewed kids as a commodity because you got mileage, right? You got your pay, you would get mileage. For instance, I could start in Coldbrook, drive to Yarmouth to do a visit for 2 hours and come back. You get all that mileage and time, right? It's a lot of money. It's tax-free too. Okay. And when I got that job and stuff, and I said that to Kelly Regan sitting there, and it was nobody said anything, and I just simply went about and did it, right, with training. But so when they created that position, we were kind of said, not like, at least my office was, don't contact social workers, blah, 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 blah. Go through the team lead. Well, I didn't agree with that. It's probably the only thing I didn't agree with my supervisor at the time. I enjoyed working, it was Nancy Parker. Hi, Nancy. You're one of the few I didn't play games with either, by the way. But anyways, I digress. But when I took the job over as team lead, I wanted to change that, because who spends the most time with those kids that are in care are case aides. It's not it's not the social workers. Family support a great deal, but it's the case aides. And when I took that job, it was a mess. It was about the money. It wasn't about the kids. And in 6 months, it became about those kids, about information, rebuilding relationships with social workers. And what I was going to do with that program, I did it all in 6 months. And then the pandemic hit. So I was the only supervisor in the entire province. Everybody else exited the buildings, right? When they shut down community services and everything else, everybody went home. They worked from home, except for the case aides under my supervision and myself. I kept going to the office. The case aides, I was directed to set them up. Like, we had protocols for visitors into the building, like just the safety protocols, right? And case aides were manning the doors. No other office in the province. Right out of the gate, my office, my guys, because they were ready. They had all their training, first aid, nonviolent. They had everything that they needed, equipment. We were organized. We were ready to go. And nobody else was. And the province was asked to do what we did. And why was that? It was a bunch of reasons, I think. But But the biggest reason was because I went to work and I made those changes. There's so many times when you would, I can remember emails coming out saying, well, there's no more money for training. I mean, there's no more money for training. At the rehab center, if you didn't have any of your credentials, you couldn't work with the kids. But in DCS, oh no, it doesn't matter, right? And I just, I kind of went to work. And no one knew what I was doing. And then I told them what happened. We did the transformation. Like, you couldn't go forward with what they want to do. Kids were the goal for transformation is what they're kind of doing now with the foster care, where kids are going to stay in their communities instead of being shipped all over. Oops. Instead of being all over the province, they would stay in their communities, which is how it should be. But it wasn't for years. Anyways, I digress there.
Yeah.
Bring me back.
Well, your story is very similar to, again, it could be anything. It could be the education system, certainly the healthcare system, where clearly there are many people within those systems who would have answers to the problems we're facing. Yes. If nothing else, they should at least be consulted. If I had an issue going on here within my business and it was related to a certain department or a certain side of things, let's say, I don't know, for argument's sake, let's say it was a sales problem. Say I have a sales problem. Well, I'm going to go to my sales people and discuss with them how we come up with a solution to this. And I find when it comes to on the government side of things, obviously we never hear from the people who are doing the work because, quite frankly, they're not allowed to say anything. They're not allowed to open their mouth. They're not allowed to comment on what's going on. And again, I'll use the school situation. Man, the school situation pisses me off. I'll come back to that again. I have 3 children, and they all started out. My daughter went all the way through the public school system, and my sons started out in public school the first couple of years. Then they spent sort of late elementary, middle school. They went to private school, and then back to high school or public school for high school. And they're almost graduate now. They're in 11th and 12th grade. But I'll give you an example. This is just one small example, but it pisses me off to high hell, so I'm going to mention it. And this happens I know this happens at every school. I've spoken to other parents about it. In the public schools, it is commonplace that imagine going to school, a young person, especially in junior high or high school, but I know this happens in high school. Imagine you're in school, you're 16 or 17 years old, and you need to use the washroom, and you go to the washroom, and you walk into the washroom, there are kids in there who are vaping and smoking and, quite frankly, engaging in sexual activity. And the school's aware of it. The principals are aware of it. The vice principals are aware of it. The teachers are aware of it. And the parents are aware of it. And the reason we're aware of it is because our kids come home from school or call us to come pick them up from school or whatever it might be to come home and use the washroom because they're uncomfortable going to the washroom in public school. Yeah. And I tell people, just take that out of the school environment for a minute. Pretend you're in the workplace. You walk into the washroom. Doesn't matter where it is. Pick any office building anywhere in this country. If you walk into the washroom and there's somebody in there smoking, it's not going to work. Nope. At the very least, you're going to look at them and say, you can't smoke in here. And if they persist, you're probably going to call security or whatever, report them to your manager, whatever it might be. If every time you walk into the washroom, there are several people smoking and or vaping and or doing something that they shouldn't do, and if you report that to your managers or your employer or the security of the building and nothing ever happens about it, it wouldn't be very long before you'd go to the media and say, by the way, I'm trying to do my job and this is crazy. There are people literally breaking the law. And in this case, we have children breaking the law in a school where there are teachers and or administrative staff. I want to say I don't fault the teachers, but I grew up, going to school in the 80s and there was none of that shit going on. No. If you were in the bathroom smoking or doing something you shouldn't be,
you'd be suspended for one.
Of course you would. And there would be teachers who would take it upon themselves to go in there and kick the door in and say, if I catch you in here again, just like you said, you're going to be suspended.
I went to West Kings in Auburn for high school, and there was a smoking section for Garvach Gardens, they used to call it. But there was a desert for staff,
Yeah, we had a smoking area too. We called it the pit.
The pit, yeah.
Right? It was outside, though.
Exactly.
It was outside.
Not inside.
It was down on the other side of the parking lot.
Right.
And the teachers knew the kids went there to smoke, and they left them alone. And I'm not suggesting that you should chase these kids all over the parking lot. I mean, they're going to smoke. They're going to smoke. But you can't let them smoke in the school.
No.
And then when parents have issue with it and they reach out to you as the principal or administrative staff at the school, you basically give them yeah, we'll take care of it, and then you don't.
There's no rules anymore.
Right?
There's no consequences for behavior.
No, there's no consequences for behavior, and within the school system, they just don't seem to want to do anything about it.
No.
Right? And that to me is just, I mean, there's a lot wrong with the public school system. The education itself is not good, but I just can't imagine. I just can't. It's hard to believe that we live in a world where we allow children to go to school and be uncomfortable, and we don't do anything about it.
Kids are the targets.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. The kids have been, it's nonstop. You had kids out of school for 2 years for no reason, where, then reports come out saying that, literacy rates have dropped.
Of course,
what could that be? Well, we know why, because you kept kids out of school. You interfere with it's everything, media, entertainment. It's focused on the kids. There's no rules. So what is that teaching kids? You can do whatever you want.
Right.
Most government employees operate that way.
Oh, it's a big thing. I mean, it's a big thing. I mean, then just from an entire, we can go down the rabbit hole in this one, just from an entire societal perspective, just the message that is being delivered by some to us as a society, it's the breakdown of the nuclear family.
Yep.
It's the breakdown of the extended family, for that matter.
Birth rates drop because of it?
Yes, exactly. So I was going to say, let's talk about how that pertains to immigration, for instance. We're all told, and this would be something, for instance, that I'm not a fan of when it comes to the PC government, right? So the Conservative government with this plan to double the population by 2050, is that what it is? I think it was 2050.
Yeah. Again, I think that's a talking point.
Yeah, it's a talking point, and I think there was a period of time where they were sort of on pace to do that, and they, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, that's still their plan. I haven't heard them say otherwise. I know that the Liberal government currently is sort of suggesting that they're not for that. But regardless,
my point is, Trudeau tells them to think.
That's right. My point is that there's two things there. First of all, if you as a government have decided, because I've lived in this province my whole life, right? And I do business here, and I own several businesses, and my kids go to school here, and I went to university here. And so I'm well versed in Nova Scotia. And I don't remember at any point ever in my life, and I know more people than the average person just because I'm in business. It's the nature of what I do. I interact with far more people on average than the average person does.
Yes.
And I don't, at no point in my life have I ever heard anyone come to me and say, you know what we really need more of is we need more people around here. We need more traffic. We need more people. We need more congestion. No, I have never heard anybody ever say we need more people, other than the government who tells us we need more people, but they don't really tell us why, other than, well, we just need them. We need them they'll say we need them for jobs, and we need them for skilled trades, and we need them for so and such. But there's never any documentation. There's never any evidence presented. There's never anything like that. But even if we take that at face value, and if we were to agree, okay, great. Well, I guess we need more people. That's what you guys are the experts. What do I know? So I guess we need more people. Then what I would say is, okay, well, in its simplest form as the human race, how do we increase population? We have babies, right? I mean, that's how the rest of the world's doing it.
You start to rebuild the middle class, which has been destroyed.
Yes. And you promote the behavior that promotes population.
You focus on education, on actual education, and not flags.
Right. And you focus on promoting. And then what people will say is, oh, but young people can't have children anymore. It's too expensive. You can't afford to have kids. And I'll say, well,
why is it so expensive?
Yeah. So then shouldn't we address the issue? Isn't that what we should be addressing? We still should be promoting what is in the best interest of us as a society, which is to,
get married, have
kids, and work after our children, and
volunteer if you
raise
can.
them right, and produce
give back
good
to your
little
community.
citizens who go on to then do the same thing. That's what we should be doing,
But the government puts their foot into that, right? Like carbon tax, for instance, like whatever, right? Like garbage,
right?
Total nonsense. It's communism, but it's what it is.
Well, I think the other thing that happens here, Greg, is that we live in this deranged world where there's no denying. I'm going to stay on this topic of having children in the nuclear family. Okay. up until 15 minutes ago, that's what the human race did. That's how we got here.
Yes.
Right? The human race didn't grow by focusing on immigration. Right?
No,
it's kind of the opposite.
Building up our civilization.
That's right.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, up until, in recent history, we just ran around, different groups just ran around taking places that they want to live. But that's not how this idea that in order for us to increase our population, we have to bring it from other countries makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And it also, the other thing that happens is when like for instance, there are other countries around the world doing this. If you want and need and are smart enough to recognize that you need your citizens to reproduce, then incentivize that, right? Help them. So if what they're saying, and if the people who want to do that, the young folks who want to have children someday, and they say, but I can't, life is too expensive. Then as a government, instead of spending money on, well, there's lots of things we spend money on that we shouldn't, but for instance, instead of sending money to other countries or spending money on bringing people from other countries here, then incentivize young people in this province to help them have a family, whether that's through tax incentives or programs or education, whatever it might be. But we live in this weird space now that not only do we not promote what is most obvious, but there are groups that are not for the nuclear family and they're not for having children. And that's fine. We live in a country where I can honestly tell you, while I don't agree with that, that's your opinion. If you don't want to have children or get married, then don't.
But don't shove it down little kids as soon as they go through the doors in primary.
That's right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Your view, you're welcome to it, but your view is not good for us as a civilization.
Because almost like a lot of teachers are not, they're advocates.
Right.
And they're just reciting political talking points. Like I honestly, if I was in a position of power for education, if I was a minister of education, I'd almost like to say, let's go into the schools and sit down with the teachers and ask them things about what they teach. Not the political messaging, not the flags on their walls. Ask them about, what do you teach?
Right.
And I would be shocked to find probably a lot wouldn't be able to answer those questions. That they spend so much time on political agendas and their own stuff, because maybe in their own personal lives they've been isolated and alone for so long, whatever. Sure. But it's constant. Like it's the kids are the focus. It's the messaging. It's constant. It's just propaganda.
That is what it is.
It is. It's just the same messaging. Repeat.
And I just don't understand how I have yet to see any political party anywhere, certainly in this country. I've heard bits of it coming from the U.S.
You get bits and pieces like Polivier, and Bernier. I mean Bernier is insignificant now.
They're true though. The PPC party
it's a little bit, but again, everybody's afraid to say it.
That's right. That's what I mean. Everyone is just afraid to say what.
Which is why they hate Trump so much, because he says the truth.
That's right.
He's not. I mean, for working with kids, I never bullshitted kids when I worked with kids. I was brutally honest with them and with the parents, because I didn't believe with lying to them. Like, sure. You're in care, you don't have your kids. Well, I'm going to be honest with you about things. You want your kids back? Okay, listen to me for 5 minutes.
Right.
This is what you need to do.
Right.
Right. But the kids, in the 90s, what happened to our manufacturing, middle class jobs? Went over to China.
Right.
We don't have control of our supply chain anymore, right?
Right.
Which is why Trump's hopefully he'll win today. Because he's going to bring all that back. Mm-hmm. He's going to rebuild quickly, right? Which it's frustrating. Like I talked about what I did in the 6 months. It's frustrating to know that the solutions are there. They're easy. The solutions
are fundamentally simple.
They are.
They're the simplest. The solutions are in almost anything that we talk about. Any political.
Well, politics is a game too.
Right, that's what I'm saying. But if you peel away the politics of it, the issue at hand is simple.
Yeah,
it's a simple solution. I don't actually think there is any situation anywhere happening anywhere in the world that if intelligent, reasonable, logical, rational people sat down and conversed, they couldn't figure out.
But probably some of it in 5 minutes.
Yes, yeah. Like immediately there'd be an immediate solution that.
But when you have politicians and bureaucrats that are corrupt, that they use NDAs and things to silence people, and they work together like governments and unions to corrupt and like to cover up their corruption and fraud, then this is what you have. It's not about the people.
Yeah, no, I want
It's
somebody
irrelevant. The voter, it's irrelevant. It doesn't even matter what they want. It's about, right, like Chender hasn't come out of Metro yet because they're in trouble. The PCs they've got them on the run here in Metro. That's why, it's about the messaging and it's about control.
Right.
And they can't handle the truth because they don't have control with that.
That's right. And that's why they advocate, the NDP and the Liberal Party, that's why they advocate for just more and more government and more control.
You make it bigger. It's like community services, like attack the kids, you attack the families. I can only imagine how much it's increased. I know the budgets have increased and necessarily, and rightfully so. But just the sheer numbers of people now that are in community services, that are involved with that department, children and families, like people are hurting out there. And then you add like the population and growth and stuff. You got the schools that are overrun with kids who can't speak English and teachers aren't trained to teach the language.
And the schools where they are, unbeknownst to the all of us, they're adding another language to the signage at the schools. And it's not French. I would love to see somebody step forward, or a group of people. I also think nowadays if you were to run for a position like, Trump's doing it now in the US. He kind of did it at the later stages, but he's basically built a team. He's put a team of people around him.
Oh, he's got quite the team.
Yeah.
He's got Democrats, RFK Jr.
Yeah, he's got an amazing team.
Elon Musk,
amazing
Joe
team
Rogan.
Of people. It's like you buy one, you get all of this. It's amazing, right?
Because people see Trump, it's not the typical Republican Democrat anymore.
Right.
If you have a third party candidate, that's Trump. Because he's drawing every race, every religion. I mean, the news media is not saying that, but that's, if you're on X and you can actually think for yourselves and do a little bit, take 5 minutes, you're going to see that, right? If that's the third party candidate, it's a little, not more so than it was in 2020, but he is that candidate. And even in Canada, like when the federal election kicks in, I think we may see a bit of that. The way that the messaging is coming out, it's the same rhetoric that the Democrats have used against Trump. The Liberals are using it, and the NDP are using it against Bolivia. It's coming, and the same in this province too. They're doing the same thing to Houston. It's not but you can. It's there. You can see it. It's underneath the surface.
Seen it. Yeah.
But if this election, the provincial election, was a year from now, it would have been a mess. Yeah. So I'm kind of glad he did call the election, but.
Do you think that's part of the reason why they called an election?
I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah.
That's what it's in the media. It's constant. The rhetoric. I've watched, like I said, I watched a lot of garbage too the last 4 years. I watched every legislative session. I watched every meeting. I watched it all. And the rhetoric is there.
Yeah.
Oh, it's yeah.
What I'd love to see somebody, again, this is definitely I would say it's definitely what's being attempted by the People's Party and Bernier's party at the national level is like this. At the provincial level, I'd love to see somebody do the same thing and you certainly see it in the U.S. and you've seen people, even if you set aside Trump, he's obviously the centerpiece of it. But even folks like Vivek Ramaswamy, who talks a lot about government efficiency and downsizing the government, and I want somebody to say the same thing here. I want somebody to.
Well, that's what Elon Musk is going to be like. He's going to accept a role.
Right.
And he's gonna gut it.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna go in as a business person and he is going to absolutely
he's gonna do what he did to
save trillions of dollars. Yeah. He's gonna save trillions of dollars for that government and for the people.
Yeah.
And what are we doing in Canada?
I want somebody to do the same thing here. I want them to start at the provincial level. And if that person rises up here in this province, I can tell you that they will have my support. I want them to step forward and say, listen, I have a plan, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get the best of people. So when it comes to education and healthcare and so on, I'm going to obviously use the best of people who are currently in that system, but I'm going to go get the best of people to come up with the solutions. And I'm going to Nova Scotians, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be truthful and forthcoming with all of you on the information. Here's the current state of affairs. Here's what we're going to do about it.
Yep.
And of course, if you don't like that, then don't vote for us. But we all know that the reality is if the truth were out there and we all knew what it was and they peeled back the layers and they revealed the corruption and the stuff that goes on. Yeah. If more of that happened, then I honestly believe that if people were really truly informed, if all of us really truly, and this comes back, has more to do with the media than it does with politicians.
Oh, well, yeah.
But if we were all really truly informed of the facts of the matter, 80% of us would vote the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Easily. Yep.
And then there might be 10% that are wishy-washy, and then there's 10% that are just,
Yep.
I don't know what to tell.
Well, I mean,
they'll vote differently.
I mean, I compare CBC, like that. They put that post out this morning, which was, I mean, they're getting ratioed to hell and back, right? It's
right,
fun,
yeah.
even like the more national, like CTV, like I ratio them almost every day,
Right.
Just by putting a meme up, right? Whatever. But you can just, I don't know, it's that controlled narrative. It's the funding. It's coming from the government. So Trudeau will be gone.
Oh,
right?
they'll be gone, yeah.
So what happens to these? The funding will be gone. They're going to go. They're gone.
I hope they do.
They're going to die. Like global, they're basically penny stock now.
Yeah, I hope they do, because they made their bed and now they're going to lie at night. I hope they get what they deserve.
But like I view CBC Nova Scotia differently than I do CBC the national, because at least the CBC Nova Scotia, sometimes they get it right with the local stories. Like I repost their stuff all the time, and I don't always comment. That may shock some people, but I don't. But some of those stories, it's 100%. And the reason why I don't, and I know it's true, is because I've been watching all the government. I've been watching the legislative sessions.
Right.
I've watched their public account meetings, which is, man, anyway, some of those meetings. But sometimes you can see those reporters, every once in a while, they knock it out of the park. It's not always. And there's usually the same reporters, though, that are on the government side. You can, or whoever the messaging, like the Liberals or NDP. But you can always tell, right? But sometimes they get it right.
Yeah.
So it's there. Like the business model, well, they've got the business model. They just have to be honest with people. But it's probably too late, ultimately, for a lot of people. It's just, like you say, they made their bed.
It works the other way too. I don't take everything I read on X, at face value. You have to, you read something and then you fact check it and then you research. You got to do your research.
Well, it's a war.
Unfortunately, I wish it wasn't that way, but you have to do your research.
Well, that's what I like about X, because for X, like it's not about like your followers. It doesn't matter. I mean,
No, I don't care about that shit either.
No, I mean, mine's taking off, but it's who you follow. So if a story breaks,
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. Wait, sorry, I do care about that shit when it comes to this podcast. So please like and follow as much as possible. Should say that. See, I'm not used to self-promotion. It's not my game.
Well, you should, because, I mean, would you see CBC doing this right now?
Not a chance.
Or Global?
Not a chance.
The last time I watched, every morning I do stuff, but I'll get sometimes we'll pay attention to global stuff, right? So last week they had Churchill on, and I swear the guy was reading a prepared script from the Liberal Party, because his heart wasn't in it.
Sure.
I can't remember his name. Sorry. The guy who hosts the morning show.
Okay.
I should know that because I watch it every morning. But it was like he was just sitting there just putting in his time. And it was a prepared script. He was reading off it for Churchill. But could you imagine this on, it wouldn't happen.
No.
It would not happen. I don't even think on public access anymore it would happen.
No, and even on talk radio, I guess. I always actually kind of had for myself when it comes to this podcast, I always kind of, originally I more so visualized it as just more of a radio show type thing, mainly because I don't really have a strong desire.
I don't even notice the cameras right now.
No, you don't notice them once you get going.
No,
it's no big deal. You just,
now I do.
Yeah, that's right. Now you're just having a conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, even things like talk radio, you just don't. This is this type of conversation, this form of media, obviously is enormous now, right? It's the way people truly get the information. If you want, the truth. If you want genuine, authentic exchange.
Tucker Carlson, for instance, what he does, and Joe Rogan, and Benny Johnson. There's a whole bunch, right? Steve Bannon in the War Room and stuff. This is what this is. Like they'll have guests on, but that is the new media, because like Rogan last night, he dropped a podcast with Elon Musk. Right. That came out perfect timing. Right. It has an impact more so than the media. Because I think the majority of people think like we do. It's just the noise from the narrative and the NDPs and the CBCs of the world, that propaganda, the constant repetition. But this is different because this is real. This isn't scripted. We don't have scripts.
No, and I think also what's happened, which is nice from what I understand, from what you can see in some of the, not so much polling, but some of the different interviews and so on, or I guess surveys would be the right terminology, is that some of the younger generations are coming around too. They're realizing that this is where you have to get your information.
Yeah.
Right. And
They don't watch CBC.
no,
They were watching Rogan, and
it's the boomers, man. It's the boomers. It's the boomers. I try. Oh my God. Like,
Well, the
lucky,
80s,
fortunately for me, my mom's a boomer, of course, and she's got it figured out. She's got it figured out though. But she's got it figured out. She's too smart to be fooled by that. But I have other family members, and I love them to death. But they're still getting their news from.
Well, because in Nova Scotia in the 80s, what happened? Like, we used to get 2 cable channels. They came out of Bangor, right? Stacey's Old Time Country Jamboree, and
Right.
we get the Red Sox games and stuff, right? But and I don't like the Red Sox, but anyways, but that's the game. We get it's kind of cool. But then CNN, right? It was like 80, 82, 83, 81, something like that.
Not in my world, man. I grew up down in West Shedore. In 82, 83, we still had a party line. We still, like, our phone rang 3 times. And if it rang 2 times, it was the old lady up the street. And if you picked it up and she's having a conversation, you had to wait for her to hang up.
Well, I was in the valley. Yeah, well, I was in the valley in the good part, I guess. But I mean, not or the more modern. I shouldn't say
you
the
were in
good
town.
Part, the more modern part. I was in Elsford for but CNN started being pumped in.
Right.
And I remember CNN not being like. I mean, now it's like Entertainment Tonight Show. That's what it reminds me of.
It's
that's all that it is.
It's entertainment, yeah.
You have 8 talking heads, all in the Democrats. You got 1 Republican guy.
Yeah.
Scott Jennings is kicking their ass. But anyways, I don't watch CNN either, but you get the clips.
Sometimes I'm like you. Sometimes I'll flip it on. Just like I actually flipped it on this morning. Election day. So I sat down this morning to have morning coffee with my wife, and I flipped the show on, flipped CNN on, and I actually said to him, like, let's see what these clowns are saying, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you can't even. It's difficult to even stomach. It's like,
you can't. I mean, we witnessed a miracle with President Trump. Mm-hmm. That was a miracle.
So you had sent me an email last week. Yep. Do you want to hit on that a bit?
Sure. Well, the last 4 years, it's been a hell of a go for my family and I. We've lost a lot, but we've also gained a lot too. But in the last 4 years, I have spoken to MLAs from every party. The last email, I've been talking with PCs on and off and stuff, trying to get someone to have a conversation with me. I think there's reasons why they're not. I think, like I said, I think they took what I said very serious about the court case, about my treatment, the fact that I don't have the NDA, the fact that I exposed the grievance process with the unions as make-believe, that it's used to cover fraud and corruption, and they silence people. But there was an email. The email I sent you. Yeah, starting to digress a little bit. I sent it to MLAs from a few parties. I sent it to Fred Tilley when he was a Liberal. I sent it to Elizabeth Smith McCrossin. She's, of course, independent. So I covered all the bases. I sent it to Chris Palmer and to John Lohr's office. Chris Palmer, he's the Kings West MLA. And the last year I've been dealing exclusively with that office. That office has been great. A person I used to work with, I consider her a friend, is works in the office there. So the email I sent, the only people I hadn't spoken to was the NDP, only because I kind of was waiting. Like everything had to happen a certain way. Everything that's happened to me, I wouldn't change a thing, regardless of what I've lost. Wouldn't change a thing. But there was Claudia Chender did a radio interview on Vino, scripted, and it kind of annoyed me. Mm-hmm. Then that morning, the lawyer who was involved with Beth McLean, Vince Langman or Longhead or whatever the hell he is, there was on Global, there was a story about him, and he made the news last week too, right? Anyways, like a car crash attorney, and I'll say it because I think that's what he is. Oh man, anyways. But I called MLA Coombs, NDP from Cape Breton Center, Whitney Pier. Mm-hmm. They put me on speaker, wouldn't tell me who else was in the room, right? And I know they know me because I've gone hard on them, right? That court case with Beth McLean, every time they stood in the legislature, there was times they wouldn't shut up about it. So I sent them an email to all parties after I got off the phone with them because my conversation with Fred Tilley and my conversation with Elizabeth Smith McCrossin and my conversation with Kendra Coombs' office, it was basically to say that back when everything was going on with me and my family, is that there's nobody in this province who was involved with this ever thought what would happen if their own child walked through those doors. of a DCS building, or if their grandkids walk through the door. What would happen if their child walked through the door? And when I said these stories to Tilly and to Coombs, I said, I want you to tell this to Churchill and to Chender. I said, the PCs know what I'm saying to you guys. And I said, don't record me. Couldn't have been more clear about that because they have a habit of doing that stuff. But I said, not saying anything different than I wouldn't say to anybody else. And in that it would be, okay, so just say if your child walked through the doors and you lucked out, or didn't luck out, I should say, and got a child welfare social worker who took an intake statement from a child or a grandparent, and what happens if that goes up the chain and they stop it, they don't pursue it, they don't investigate it, or they do a half-assed job because of their politics or who their parent was, or if they had an axe to grind or old scores to settle. I said, I want you guys to tell that story to your leaders. Mm-hmm. I said, that's why I don't have an NDA. The reasoning, it's a lot. It's about, I'm doing this for all the staff and the kids and the families that are just there for the right reasons, not the ones who got to accuse me of things and played games and, not able to defend myself, and the unions and everything else. It's about the people that do their jobs, the ones who go to work every day. They deserve better. They don't deserve no one deserves what happened to us. It's not right. And I wanted them to tell their leaders of all this so that they understand that. And I even offered them to have a truce on X because I'm not hard on them, but I like to point out the things that no one else is thinking about with the Liberals and NDP. Like I'm pretty hard on them.
Yeah, you're well versed in that.
But I even offered a truce on X. And I said, the only thing I want, there was two things. I won't talk about one thing, not today, but for me, I said, I want to tell you guys, you meet with somebody first, and I'll say, which was my daughter. You meet with her first by herself. She's an adult. And then you meet with me. And I'm going to tell you why you should consider me. I didn't say I wanted the job, but I said, I'll tell you why you should consider me for child advocate for the province. That's all I said. Mm-hmm. Right? And, I told him, I'm not suing the government because that makes no sense to me. But that's what I basically said in that email. And that's what I sent to you.
Did they respond?
No.
Nobody responded?
No. The only response that I think was what Fred Tilley crossed the floor.
Okay.
I'm not sure why he did it. I don't know. I imagine that that might have had a part to play in it. He was great. Like we talked for about at least a half an hour.
Okay.
And I told him, like, a lot of that, the reason I called him, there was a reason because back when the Liberal leadership was going on, that's when Angela Simmons was running. I think Tilley was going to run, and then he put a post on about, it was $25,000, I think, to run. And he complained about it. I was like, what is this? Right? How do you go about things? Right? Like that's why I contacted him, because the reasons why he crossed the floor, it could be different reasons, but he just didn't seem to me like he was the right place. And I thought I would call him.
Okay.
And that's why I did it. I called Coombs because she's the DCS critic. And every time she stands in that legislature talks about the K-SAVE program at estimates, she always says the same line. I've watched those guys for 4 years. Every party, I was good at what I did, and I know their playbooks. Mm-hmm. And that's what I kind of said to them all. So have a conversation with me. Let's get this resolved. It's been 4 years. Stop hiding from me. Like, mm-hmm. I've been open, I've been honest, I've been transparent. I have given evidence. People have seen stuff and evidence who never should have. But like I said in that email, you're fighting for your life. Things are going to happen. Yeah, sure. And dead silence. There's been nothing from anybody.
Do you think you'll hear from anybody? Like
I think so.
After the election? Do you think they'll wait?
I think, honestly, it could be before.
Okay.
I reached out in January to every MLA office in this province, all the PCs. And I said, look, I'm the guy doesn't have an NDA, and I'm also the guy who was accused of being a racist over a Trudeau meme, mm-hmm. over policies that, right? And that's not what it was about. And I said, why, how many other people in this province, doesn't matter the color of your skin or religion, black, white, green, whatever, doesn't matter. How many people have been accused of things that they're not?
Sure.
Thousands.
Yeah, and
thousands.
Yeah, and nobody nobody wants to speak out or say anything, even if they believe it and it's fundamentally true to its core, because they don't want to be labeled,
yep.
called names,
yep.
have something taken from them.
Yep.
It's terrible.
But I honestly, even though the biggest reason I think was Trump. The former NDP candidate, that's all she wanted to talk about, right?
Really?
When I started, the day I started in Granville as the team lead, there was a massive, just a big mat, like one of those poster boards, like for the frame posters.
Okay.
There was like a framed picture on the wall. It was Trump memes. That's what was in the DCS building in this province.
Really?
The day I started, yeah, the day I started. And it was like,
So
that
bizarre.
was to me.
That's so bizarre.
Again, but that was a dig at me, right?
Whether you like Trump or not, and look, I'll go on record by saying, look, I don't think Trump is presidential material when it comes to his diplomacy and how he speaks and so on. I mean, I understand when people say, well, he's not much of a president because he's too abrasive or whatever the case may be.
No one can ever tell you why they don't like Trump. It's because, well, the media has told
All
them.
they can do is repeat what they've heard. They could repeat some nonsense that they've heard in the media, but they can't tell you something he's done other than some superficial thing.
See, I like him. I like the abrasiveness with the media and the public, because he's just like you say about on the work site. That's where his career was.
Yes.
He's a builder. They had the best economy in the history of that country when he was president. Crime dropped, and black unemployment raised.
Yes.
There was peace. There was no wars.
That's right.
And then as soon as he was out, all of a sudden, well, let's go.
And remember how much they all loved him before he was elected.
Till he came down that escalator.
Remember when he's on the View and they're all hugging him and they love him. I mean, and then just like a switch.
Yeah. Well, again, everybody, like, that's the problem too. I mean, right? Like,
and he didn't change.
No.
Right? He didn't change.
But again, you have to understand. Like, I look at it too. How many people are compromised by that Diddy list?
Oh, that's huge, man.
And Epstein.
That's huge.
All
these celebrities that are coming out of nowhere. It's like,
that's what I love about
people
memes.
See what this is?
That's what I love about memes, because like, that's why, I mean, I offered that letter for a truce, because I said to them, I can like take out your messaging with a meme in seconds.
Sure.
And I mean, that's all that this is. Like, there's a meme about a celebrity and a guy with a gun in the back, the Diddy list, right? You're going to, like, it happens all the time, right? Like, the world's about to change. And it's
hopefully for the better.
What's that?
Hopefully for the better.
I think it will.
Yeah.
I think tonight will be interesting, but
yeah, it'll be nerve-wracking. Well, maybe we can reconvene sometime, Greg. This was a good conversation we had here today.
Yeah,
There's lots.
I've enjoyed this. Didn't even think I was on the camera. It's kind of nice.
No, it was good. Maybe someday as well. I'd like to chat with you a bit on if I come back to the housing crisis and the affordability crisis and so on. I'm going to say something here that might be relatively controversial, but
Say it.
I'm going to say it anyway.
It brings up conversation.
When it comes to the housing crisis, and what I mean by this is the availability. I don't want to confuse this. I'm not suggesting that I have the answers as to what's causing the amount of, the number of people becoming homeless. Yeah. I want to take that part of it. I just want to talk about it from a construction builder's perspective, the actual volume of housing being built. That's not complicated. I could myself, and not just myself. I know other people could do the same thing, but I could solve this housing crisis in 2 years. I'd have it solved. 2 years
I believe you.
2 years from today. I
believe you.
I could.
Yep.
And what I mean by that, I don't mean bring down the cost of housing all around the country or all around the province. Rather, I can't control those things. But if we're talking about getting enough units built that everyone that doesn't have a place to live has a place to live, assuming that the government has the funds to do it, and they do.
They do.
Then in 2 years' time, I could have it solved. If you told me, Ryan, listen, we will give you the money that you need and the land that you need and the resources that you need, and most importantly, we will remove the barriers to these development agreements and permits that you need.
Yes.
In 2 years' time, I would have everyone who doesn't have a house or a unit to live in.
Because, like we say, our problems are not insolvable. They're not.
No.
They're
easy. They're not even complicated. This one's not even complicated. It's very easy. They talk about, they have big talk about removing, fast tracking this and removing that and bringing down the barriers of that restrict builders and developers and so on. That's complete and utter horseshit.
It is.
If they would really do that the way that it could be done, in other words, if there was a parcel of land right there next door, and I could build however many units on it, and I'm saying me, this could be any developer, and I could build however many units on it, but it's zoned for single family construction. That means that in that zoning, this is a whole other conversation. I'll probably do a bit on this myself and talk to the camera and sort of inform everybody. But the reality is there are these bylaws and requirements, development requirements when it comes to any particular zoning. Each particular zoning requires this much road frontage, this minimum size lot, and so on. And if you get rid of all that and you say, never mind that, what we need is the little tiny home village that they just built in Cobequid in Sackville.
Yep.
There had to be some kind of development agreement or something that went on there because that's not as of right development. But if you could essentially make it as simple as of right. So in other words, if I went to you and said, okay, how many units do you need? Tell me what you need built and let me help you mobilize the people to get it built. And it's not going to be the same solution for everyone because as you know, especially you understand that not everybody who is homeless needs the same thing. No. And quite frankly, they can't all live together. No. Right? So there are different solutions. Yeah, you have different
and some people are going to be homeless because that's what they choose.
Exactly. So I'm only talking about the folks who want to have a roof over their head. I'm not suggesting we make anybody go inside. I'm not suggesting that. No. I'm also not suggesting that I know what is needed because I don't know what's needed when it comes to the social services side of it and the other things that need to go along with the housing. But when it comes to the housing, the actual units, the construction, I could have that solved in 2 years. In 2 years' time, there wouldn't be a homeless person.
Because DCS at that point should not even be involved in that process.
Right.
That's not their role.
Right.
It's the funding. It's about the wraparound support services like they've been going off and that stuff. Like, I was hard on McGuire, but he was also my in too, right? Like that's a whole other conversation. But like I would like to talk to McGuire just about, right? He has his history. I have mine. We couldn't bullshit each other. I wouldn't be able to bullshit him about staff.
Sure.
And he certainly couldn't bullshit me about kids in care.
Sure.
But if you take all, like you say, you shove it to the side and just let the builders build and get rid of the regulations and be smart about it. Oh my God, yes. I'd probably under 2 years.
Right. And people will say, and then, there would be people that are cynical and they would see me say something like that, say, oh yeah, of course you could.
We need it now. We need it now.
Or they'll say like, oh yeah, it's great for you. Yeah. So you can make a bunch of money building houses. I'm saying I would do it. Give me a position within a nonprofit. Yeah. Right? I don't need to, I'm not looking for my business to personally gain from it. But what I'm telling you is I could solve it. In 2 years' time, there wouldn't be a homeless person.
If you were willing to do that,
an unhoused person.
Your business would take off because of that, because you'd be doing that for the benefit of the people that are in need of housing.
Sure.
Right?
And I'm telling you, I would do it. Somebody calls me up and says, Ryan, I want to explore what you just said. Yeah. Let's do it.
But just if you start getting people out of this province and country who should not be here because they broke the law, or at least have some work with them and let's look at your situation and find a pathway here to do it right.
Right.
But if you just did that and limit how many people are coming in, get better control out of it, the housing market, just by that, it's just going to start to self-balance.
Yeah, of course. There's also it's also important to note
rental drop. And
when it comes to how, like people think, they say, they hear things like housing crisis and affordability crisis and so on, and all of that's true. But make no mistake, there are houses currently on the market available for sale all over the province, everywhere. It's not that there aren't places to move into, but those are for people buying homes. The problem is with the folks who are renting or not even renting, but need a place to live, that they're not buying something.
No.
Right? There's two different things. There's affordability for those who are trying to buy, like for instance, with this current election, there are some of the parties are throwing around down payment help and different things. Yep. And sure, I actually don't think that's a good idea. But, I actually don't think that's a good idea at all. I think that's a terrible idea, quite frankly. But that's aimed at folks buying properties, right? And quite frankly, those folks, they're not the most vulnerable. That's not the group that we're talking about when we talk about, of course, unhoused people. People aren't going from unhoused to buying an $800,000 house. But the group that are unhoused and need a place to live, and for various reasons, you know better than I do what those reasons are. 2 years tops, I'd have every one of them under a roof.
And I think you're right.
And I don't say that because I'm full of myself and I think that I have any kind of magic.
But it's reality. You have the experience.
I just know. I can do the math. It's not that difficult.
Well, that's like I say, when the only time I had a face-to-face with Kelly Regan, it was like, well, that's easy. And I went and did it. It took me 6 months.
Right. But again, you're somebody who you had an expertise in what it is the problem that you were trying to solve.
The biggest benefit that I had going in that job was that I worked at the rehab center in Waterville from 93 until 2013. In the 90s especially, because it changed once the kids' homes started going there. But when I started there, it was done a certain way, right? It was about training. It was about community and those clients. It was done right. And when you get a good start like that, you don't lose that. You know, even though politicians and everybody want you to forget where you've come from. Like that's the union said I had a photographic memory and I was a star witness. Weird shit to say to somebody.
Do you have photographic memory?
Apparently so.
Oh yeah, cool.
It's not that I can read a book and then, I mean, I can, I guess, but I never really thought about it that way until it was approached that way. When I was called the star witness, I knew that was about Beth. I just knew that.
Okay.
Never segueing back to that, but I just knew. But I don't know, like if you have a good start in your career, which I was very fortunate, I worked for some really good people at that rehab center. Eleanor Newton, Barb Leith, Karen Tobin, Patty Rose, I could keep going. Ann Reed. I worked with some amazing people just when I got started there. For charge people on units, Edith Burry, my God, Carol Madden, Madame Madam, anyways. Carol Madden, the late Ann Paul. She was insane, but I loved working with her, right? And they're all females. That's how I got my start there, right? And a lot of good guys too, right? So it's kind of funny. The province has CART, Community Action Response Team. A buddy of mine, we coined that back in the 90s when the kids' homes opened because we were Community Action Response Team because every night we were in the building still. And every night, usually about 6 o'clock, we would get a call to go out because the kid would take off from one of the homes. So we would call ourselves Community Action Response Team, cart your ass to the rehab center, right? Just as a joke, right? It was kind of funny when that came up in policies. I'm like, Cart, wait a minute. I should have trademarked that, I guess. But anyways,
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
But that's the thing, you know your business, and I've had almost 30 years in it. And
I know my business, and so I know how fundamentally simple this solution would be. I appreciate the conversation. I like to. I think conversations like this hopefully will happen more often, and we're in a part of the world where it's like we talk about the U.S. a lot, and it's not because we're not Americans, but like anything, they're ahead of the curve on many things. Certainly when it comes to this type of media and conversation, problem-solving conversations, I guess we could call it, or at least having some conversation around it. So hopefully we'll do some more of it, and I appreciate your time. Appreciate you sharing your story.
No, I appreciate your time as well. This was refreshing after 4 years of beating my head against a wall.
That's good.
So it was nice. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.